Hello everyone, it's Brandon here, and today I'd like to tell you a story about one of my language students that I hope we can take onto ourselves and apply in our own lives. For those of you who don't know, I'm a multilingual languages teacher. I teach foreign languages as kind of my day job. And I had a class with one of my students this past week, one of my German students, and we were talking about fluency. We were talking about the ability to express ourselves like fluently in a language. And my student was expressing some frustration at not quite being at the place that she wants to be in terms of just fluency, being able to not have to look for her words as much. As many of us who are learning a second language, she kind of wanted to not have to spend as much time like translating in her mind or looking for the words in English. And so we were kind of talking about that. And I came to a realization that I think is kind of apt, and I think that it can be applied in many different areas of life. Definitely it applies to language learning. And I'm going to use kind of the example from language learning first. But I think it can also be kind of taken and applied more broadly to a bunch of other areas as well. So what I told her was that there are two types of patience that I kind of took out of her description of kind of her situation or where she is right now in her fluency, the current language level that she's at, versus where she wants to be, kind of where she's projecting herself into the future, what her goal is, what she wants to achieve. And I said that's really like the first level of patience. There's one level of patience that focuses on the discrepancy between like where you are now and where you want to be in the future. And that kind of has to come to terms with the fact that you're not there yet, right? There's a patience that has to do with waiting. Not a passive waiting. It's especially with language learning or with learning of any kind. It's not like learning is not a passive process, right? You have to be actively engaged in the process of learning. Otherwise, it's not going to happen the same way. You can learn some things passively, and actually, maybe I will do another video another time on passive language learning, because I really think that there is something to be said for passivity in language learning specifically that can be really helpful, and that can be really what's the word I'm looking for here? Efficient or effective. But yeah, that's another video. That's another topic for another time maybe. But there is this one type of patience, right? The patience of being in one place and looking forward to the place where you want to be, looking forward to where your goal is, and recognizing kind of the distance between where your goal is and where you are right now. That requires a certain level of patience to be able to just kind of tolerate that discrepancy, right? Tolerate that difference. The second part, though, the second type of patience has to do with how you approach the meantime, how you approach being where you are in the moment. Because if you are not, for example, at that place that you want to be with language fluency, or it can be anything, right? This principle, I think, applies more broadly as well. But if you're not where you want to be, then in the meantime, while you're working on it still, you're still at a lower level, right? You're still not quite as comfortable, not quite as competent, not quite as confident as you want to be in the things that you're trying to do. And so there's a second type of patience that kind of comes into play here, and that is the patience of trying anyway. The patience of being able to stay and to push forward and to continue trying and to be okay with making mistakes, right? In a language learning like context, this is pretty clear, pretty vivid. Like you have a pretty easy example of this, right? An easy example could just be if you're talking to someone in a new language, and maybe this person also speaks your native language, right? It would be much easier just to kind of flip back into your native language, to resort to that space where you feel more comfortable, more confident, more yourself. Find a different way of just expressing yourself that is a little bit closer to home, that is a little bit more practiced, a little bit more polished, that would be the easier, more comfortable solution, right? But that's not going to force you to learn more. That is not going to stretch you. That is not going to help you to learn and progress and grow. What's going to help you with those things is trying anyway. Trying to express yourself in that new language, even though it doesn't come as easily to you, even though you're stumbling over your words, you're looking for specific vocabulary, you're maybe like bumbling around with the grammar, like your word order isn't in the right place, whatever it might be, trying it anyway, right? Being willing, being humble enough to make mistakes and recognize that mistakes are just part of the learning process. They are just part of the necessary elements that go into learning and growth and becoming. And so that, I think, is the second type of patience. It requires a certain amount of patience to stay there in the discomfort and to push through it instead of trying to get out it or go around it, try to find like an escape, try to fall back on something more comfortable, something that's easier for you. There comes there's a certain type of patience that has to do with just toughing it out and staying in the uncomfortable situation and pushing through it, learning from it, trying anyway. So yeah, I thought this was really insightful. These two different types of patience. Again, like the first one being the kind of waiting for that level that you're like, that goal, that milestone that you're trying to achieve or work towards, and kind of hitting that point where you feel like, okay, like I've arrived. And of course, like with learning, hopefully learning never stops, right? The goal is that you are always learning, always adding on to, that you never really arrive fully at like the end of your learning or the end of your becoming, the end of your growth. But you can definitely hit certain milestones along the way. And those milestones can be like goals, kind of future pitched goals that you're working towards, kind of your Northern Star that guides you, it's what you're working towards. And there does come, like there is a certain amount of, or a certain type of patience, I think, that is related to that. But the second one also is a certain patience that involves just still being in the moment, recognizing and acknowledging the reality of where you are now and trying not to resent that too much, but trying to allow that to be part of the process, just pushing forward, taking one step at a time, being patient with yourself in your mistakes, in your current, like the current spot that you're at, just recognizing, okay, this is where I am. And in order to get where I want to go, like these steps from now until then are necessary and part of the plan, or part of the process. So yeah, I leave that with you. Again, I think this can be applied in many different areas, not just language learning. Definitely applies to language learning, but I think you can apply this to anything really, where you're trying to develop something, you are trying to become, you're trying to grow in some way. We need to remember to be patient with ourselves regarding kind of the end goal or the milestone, like the checkpoint along the way. But we also need to be patient with ourselves in the present moment, recognizing that where we are now is okay. Like we all start somewhere, and every step that we take, like leading up to those checkpoints, is an important step towards that checkpoint. And without it, we would never arrive at that checkpoint anyway. So just try to have some humility, some patience, hopefully both types of patience. And let me know if you find this insightful or helpful. Also, let me know if there are other types of patience that you think also factor in here. I would love to hear your thoughts about that. Anyway, that's it for today. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.